there's a potential that there will be an agreement with the police union, the collective bargaining agreement item. So we have been asked if we would be able to put together a quorum for November 7th, if indeed that comes to pass. Do I have people available on November 7th, so that if we needed to have a meeting that night to be informed of that? It would be the first Thursday of the month, I think.
I'm open at that hour.
Okay.
Yep, I am.
6 o'clock.
All right, so we at least have a quorum, so if we needed to do that, we could do that. The other comment is, it seems like we're all set for Thursday night, not Thursday night, next Tuesday night with the informational symposium. So hopefully, it will be an interesting experiment. I do appreciate the presenters for being willing to give this a shot. I have jokingly referred to it as the State of the Town address. Don't know what else to call it other than it's an informational symposium. I'm sure that the presenters will probably be kicking me for a week or so. But anyway, we're on schedule for that. And as far as I know, the only board member or committee member not available at the town meeting will be Peter. That's correct? So on Tuesday, November 12th, we're all good?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to firm that up. As far as, do I have any public comment from anybody on the committee? Actually, Peter, if you wanted to bring up at this point any future agenda items that we were just talking about, you can probably bring it up at this point, and I'll try to make a note.
Sure. So before the meeting started, Terry and I were just chatting, and I observed that if we go by our regular schedule and are not adding meetings, we will only have 2 more regular meetings this calendar year after tonight, because of the way that the Christmas holidays and Thanksgiving fall this year, with the 2nd and 4th Tuesday. Thursday, excuse me.
Thanksgiving is Thursday this year.
Yeah. Sorry, it's been a long day for me. I woke up in Charlotte this morning, so. Two of the areas that we have not made progress on that we have discussed repeatedly over the course of the last several months, one of which is getting department heads in for informal discussions before budget season. If we officially look at January as budget season, we literally only have a couple more meetings until then. And so should we have a discussion, or at least prioritize what departments we would like to speak with prior to that, if any, if that's still something that we would like to do. I think that that's probably a worthwhile discussion to have. In addition to police and fire and public works, which are the departments that I think we've all mentioned repeatedly around the table, I personally would like to have a discussion with Heather just about the general workings of town hall, and do we anticipate any changes, or how are the increases in funding that we committed to last year working out. So I think that that's probably an agenda item worth discussing. And then secondly is the goal setting that we put together. One area that I'd like to land on, at least my top priority in terms of all the goals that we agreed to, around the definitions of level spending or level funding and associated definitions. And so if we can get that on an agenda item, I'd be happy to bring some drafts or do some research or whatever is necessary to get that conversation going.
Okay. And then I know the other thing that you had brought up was around cybersecurity.
Yeah, so, and I'm not sure that that's a discussion that we would want to have as part of at least a televised meeting.
Sure.
So maybe that's something that we may want to have
just a workshop.
Yep. Or pre-discussion around.
Yep.
In particular, I'm less concerned about the inner workings of our technology office and cybersecurity. I am interested in insurance coverage and how that relates. So it may be more of a Heather discussion than a Michael discussion, but
Okay.
I think that that's something that we should look at.
Yeah, that's fine, and actually, just a update, I will go back to, once everything was all set for the information symposium, I figured I'd go back to all of the, I'm trying to remember, and again, you know, like, we'll grab Heather as well to talk about the town hall and the addition of the positions. Although, I'm wondering if the recreation position, would that be a discussion with you, Heather, or would that be a discussion with Jack? So when we have Public Works come in, we should talk to him about the changes in his personnel and what the effect is, if we have questions on that. Yeah, okay. Okay. So basically, all, the 4 departments that I heard back from when I first went out was obviously police, fire, Public Works, and the Council on Aging all said, you know, whatever you want, whatever you need. They're happy to come, so I'll go ahead and schedule them. I guess the question is, actually, let me just ask this question. When do you present the 5-year forecast? Mid-January, okay. So, yeah, so actually, we would want to have everything in and done in November and December. So I guess the question would then be, do we want to add meetings in November or December if we want to hear from different departments, and are people available to do that?
Thursdays are generally available for me because I've got a meeting at work too, so it tends to be a free night.
Okay.
My only week that I am not available at all is the first week of December. I'll be away that entire week on
Okay.
a business trip, so the 5th I will not be available.
Okay, Jay?
I'm usually available unless it's snowing.
Then you're plowing, right. Okay, then what I'll do is, I'll go ahead and reach back out to those folks, and try to get down to specific dates that people may be available to have them come in. And for the most part, we'll probably workshop those. I'm not sure that we'll televise those. We'll try to make it informal, and maybe I'll get a couple of people in on one night, just to have a coffee with the FinCom, I guess, I don't know. We could arrange to have cookies, I suppose. But actually, if the chief comes, maybe he'll bring banana bread. It's very good. All right, well then, do I have any other discussion from anybody else on that? No, all right.
No.
Then, the main agenda item that we had tonight was just again to take another quick look back at the warrant articles for a special town meeting. And to see if there was anything that was left over that anyone wanted to revisit. And I know that we had initiated a discussion towards the end of the meeting about whether or not there was something that we should bring forward. Selectmen, I just want to take a minute to just...
So the only items that, you know, there could very well be new information that the town manager has that we're not aware of relative to the articles. Is there any new information or anything that's come forth in the last 2 weeks on any of these?
So, since your last public hearing, the article on the LED lights, that one was removed. So for
Oh, okay.
The decision was, because the inclination of the Green Communities Committee was to proceed with purchase of the streetlights, and we don't have enough to purchase, one being one, but there were a lot of other questions raised that we need more research into to make a informed decision.
Okay.
The only items that I think were of any controversy that came out of the last meeting were the last two, which were the petition to grant the beer and wine licenses, which, you know, there was clearly some disagreement amongst ourselves around financial impact and scope of the FinCom.
And just to address that, yeah, that was the main disagreement. It wasn't do anything with the substance of the motion. Indeed, I think I'm pretty sure I indicated as a citizen of town, at town meeting, I was going to vote for that, for the liquor license to Lanning, and I indeed voted to approve the second liquor license. My issue was more twofold, and this is sort of retroactively thinking about it after the meeting. First, I didn't know that liquor license, the cost of a liquor license was sufficient. It does have a financial effect, Peter, I grant you that. I just didn't know if it was a sufficient enough effect to key the fact that we ought to weigh in as a committee. That was issue number one. Issue number two was the discussion about, well, it might help Lanning indeed increase their revenue, be more likely to be a continuing entity in town. And I thought, okay, yeah, but that's, to me, that's an indirect or follow-on effect. So those were the two issues. And I grant you, I did not present my case as well as I ought to have, I think, but those are the two issues were a sticking point. Having said that, I thought that I'm comfortable with the decision. I don't think we need to revisit it or anything. I don't think there's anything I said tonight that's going to change anybody's mind. I do think that if in fact we have, or when we have one of the meetings coming up regarding the committee and how we handle things definitionally, we may want to at least grapple with these issues a little bit. Because what this to me leads to is if, since the committee had decided in this case that it's warranted our weighing in, our making a recommendation either for or against, does that become sort of a touchstone for a policy? And not a policy per se, not an articulated policy as much as just this is the way we do things. Yeah.
Like precedent.
Yeah, precedent, exactly.
Yeah.
And, so, and in that regard, if in fact that is the way we do things, which I guess I'm comfortable with, at least we have to be consistent going forward. That's all. End of,
Yeah, no, and actually, it makes a lot of sense. And I think, from my perspective, that basically the role of the Finance Committee is to comment on items as they would affect the budget before us.
yes.
I don't have a problem, though, when we make a recommendation or we make a determination that there is no direct financial impact, if that's what we do. I have no issue with a clarifying remark that says, while we support and want to support the economic development of the town and see this as a way forward to do that, we don't find direct financial impact as it relates to the budget. And that would be basically what my position would end up being. But that's mine. I don't know what anybody else has on that.
Well, I mean, there's two parts of the budget. There's the expense part, but then there's the revenue part. And I think that's sort of at the heart of the whole liquor license piece is the revenue we can get from the license and the revenue that Lanny can get from getting the license. And I think that it's just, that's the balance. Those are the dichotomies of thinking through these things.
Well, I think the other issue for me was, that came up, was when it became clear that we weren't talking about an on-site liquor license. So that basically we're talking about, it's retail,
Yeah.
so any revenue based on that is strictly to Lanny and the state. So, again, it doesn't hit our budget. The only thing that hits the budget would be the license.
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's important to point out, there's actually two separate warrant articles.
Exactly,
two separate
yes.
licenses.
Yes,
They're
yes.
a little bit different in nature in that the one that is earmarked for Lanny's would certainly be an enhancement to their business and hopefully, bolster the overall viability of that business and their ability to continue operating as a combination ag and retail business in Lunenburg, which I think there's general agreement in the town of Lunenburg that that's a good thing to have businesses like that. The other one is not earmarked and could potentially enhance another business already existing, or perhaps even a new business that doesn't exist could come into being as a result of petitioning and gaining this license. And, you know, I stand by the argument that I made a couple of weeks ago at the hearing. I think that there's at least $2,000 in revenue here. But there's economic benefit here that when the chairman of the planning board came here a month or two ago and said that he'd like to see finance committee representation on an economic development committee, we all generally agreed that there's a that there's reason for the finance committee to weigh in on economic development. And so in my mind, that becomes sort of a continuous argument. You know, there's continuity here to say, okay, it's in the best interest of the town, therefore, and the finance committee has generally said that it's within the purview of the finance committee to at least weigh in on economic development. I think there's enough there to say, okay, we could recommend approval, disapproval. It falls beyond the pale of there's absolutely no financial impact. There's at least some dollars here. There's $2,000 here between these two articles. That being said, this isn't a hill I'm going to die on. You know, I think there's going to be more than enough support for this at town meeting. I don't think that the finance committee's recommendation or lack thereof is really going to amount to a whole lot here. So, you know, it is what it is.
And I do think, I could interject, we agree on that. It's just, this is much ado about not a lot.
Right.
I also just think, it's interesting that I can buy Peter's, well, you know, it's going to help Lanning, probably they're going to increase their revenue. I get that. But thinking of a consumer, the fact that Lenny has a liquor license for malt and wine, it's not going to affect my liquor consumption at all. Now, if I'm an average consumer, how much does it just redistribute?
Well, you know,
I don't know. I don't know
so
the
this
answer.
could turn into a really long conversation that's well beyond our purview, but that being said, and Jerry, when he came, Jerry Lanny,
Yeah.
Jerry and I went to high school together, so, you know, there's a long history there. When Jerry came and spoke before the Board of Selectmen and before the planning board, you know, he called attention to this growing agritainment industry that has really taken on particularly in central and western Massachusetts. And, you know, you see businesses like Hollis Hills and Fitchburg, and there are a variety of others that have grown over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. We've seen bits and pieces of that. I think the farmers market to some degree has been evidence of that, of interest in that market, but it's not a market that we really tapped into in Lunenburg, despite our agricultural resources here in Lunenburg. And you know, this is partially an opportunity for Lanny's at least to begin to plug into that, right? By representing some microbreweries that are in the area and that sort of thing, and bring in some of that business and some of that growing market.
Yeah, and I will agree. I think that that's a good thing, and I think that basically the most appropriate role for the finance committee at this point, in my view, would be for me to send a letter to the planning commission and say, so when are you putting that committee together so that we know who we can appoint on economic development? Because basically, again, any of the recommendations that we're typically going to make are going to be, you know, like, how is this affecting the budget? And most of the questions I'm going to ask are going to be around, do we have a policy around that? Because, you know, you know, basically, if we don't have a policy, should we have a policy around that? But clearly, in all of the years that I've been asked to vote a recommendation, usually it's been around, you know, like, is there direct financial impact? And there is, So we could make an argument too, and maybe we can revisit this on the 7th, since we're going to be meeting anyway, and see whether we want to make a recommendation on that one, whether it's to recommend approval or to say that we find no direct financial impact. But yeah, it's certainly food for thought.
I'd also make one additional comment, not specifically related to these two articles, but just, in the role and scope of the Finance Committee in general. Mr. Rogers came and made some public comment here 3 weeks ago in a meeting that wasn't televised, but it is reflected in the minutes that will be up for approval this evening, specifically to speak to some of the whole, I think he spoke sort of to the whole concept of the goals that we've adopted, and his comment was to look to the charter and the limited scope of the Finance Committee that's outlined in the charter. And based on his comment and his recommendation, I did that. I went and I read the charter. I also read some of the statutes that pertain to finance committees as in the state of Massachusetts, and it's very limited. He's right. But what's interesting is there are a few shalls in there, and the shalls are very limited, but there also isn't a whole lot of how you get to the shalls, right? And that leaves a lot that's sort of, in my view, open to interpretation and open to the purview of the members of finance committees to determine how they get to the shall and reporting out on budgets and making their recommendations. And in my view, that allows for a fairly wide swath until somebody tells us that we can't.
Right.
The charter and the statutes, there really aren't any can'ts.
Right, and and actually, going back to that night, I mean, it was also, and I think we had a brief discussion about, basically, whatever it takes to feel comfortable and confident that you have sufficient information to make a recommendation is what you do.
Right.
So basically, if some of the goals seem like it's overreach, really, the goals aren't there to overreach. The goals are there to make sure that we feel confident and comfortable in making a recommendation to town meeting, which is what we are.
Yeah.
Well, that's one reason why we deferred so many articles, was we just don't have enough information
Right.
yet.
Right.
Which is the right thing to do. In any event,
Okay.
I think we kind of belabored that conversation.
We did a little bit, but I also think that it's a good discussion to have around the whole, okay, so the point is this, and how we get to this is important, but also, I think it is an important point to bring up that, because it is easy to lose sight of, when a committee says we're going to start something, and then they don't, and we feel it's an important thing for them to do, and economic development is one of those things. Yeah, I think we need to get back in touch with them and say, hey, any movement on that? And, haven't heard anything from you, and I'm happy to do that. Actually, before I'm happy to do that, do I have anybody who's interested in working on something like that? So that when he says, yes, we're putting together, you got a name? Or do you want to, hold off and tell me later?
I definitely have an interest, but I think I would rather see the invitation and the scope of the committee beyond just the description that we've gotten verbally.
That sounds fine. Hearing nobody else jump at the chance, I assume everybody's going to be in the same position as Peter. So, then moving along, was there another article that we held off on?
There were two that were removed, the 250 Howard Street and
Yeah, I think you knew that
635.
night that
Yep.
those were not going to make it to the town
Yep.
meeting
Those are
for
the two other ones that were removed.
the property purchases, okay.
The only other language changed in relative to the home rule petition for additional liquor license was Article 15. That license would transfer to another location so it wouldn't be tied to a location or go away if that person originally who received it relinquished it.
So you
Right.
can sell the business, you can sell the business with the license.
You could, or if they went out of business and didn't sell, then it would be up for someone else in town to apply for it.
And that's basically the way we handle most of the licenses.
Yes.
Currently.
It is.
Good.
And the only other thing, the board had a public hearing for the Butterfly Lane article, and they voted to accept the layout. That's just part of the process that needs to occur for acceptance of a public way.
Which article is that?
That
Okay.
is, yeah, 12.
All right, so basically, they accepted the layout,
Yes,
but that's not what the article is seeking to do.
right. So town meeting will accept it as a road.
Okay.
So the
Now-
layout is just the plan that's before them. They're accepting the plan as it was presented.
Okay.
So we couldn't have voted on that until they had accepted that plan.
You could have, but you probably want to wait till they did that. Yeah.
And then the other question that I have is, because I was talking about policies and stuff, do we have a road acceptance policy in town?
Yes, the Board of
what is-
Selectmen has a process, yeah.
They have a process, but is there a policy or
It has to meet certain criteria.
and if it meets those criteria, then the policy of the town is to accept the road?
No, it still has to go through the town meeting vote, so the town meeting doesn't have to accept that road even if it follows all those criteria.
Yeah, we
So
should
it's up
be
to the town
obligated
meeting voters
accept
to,
it.
yeah.
Are you
But-
trying to determine if the finance committee really is really in a position to support it or not support it because there's a policy otherwise that not overrules it, but
Well, again, it goes back to the, okay, so we can talk about, all right, how much is it going to cost to plow 300 feet versus how much is it going to cost to plow several hundred yards of road? And if there's I believe that there's been a practice, or the precedent has been that they've never turned down a road.
Not that I'm aware of.
But that would be one of those places, is there a policy or something that we need to follow so that if I'm going to make a recommendation to approve, then I know what the steps are that have been gone through to,
Well, there's, part of the process is it has to meet all of the planning board's rules and as how the plan was presented and submitted. Conservation was involved, so that happened as well, so they signed off as well on this, this roadway. And by Mass General Law, there's a process that has to be followed, including that public hearing and presenting it in the files that are filed at the town clerk's office for anyone to view. So I'm not sure what else
so let
besides.
me ask it a different way. Would it ever be in a position where the finance committee's vote was essentially irrelevant? Right, I think that's kind of what we're getting at. If there's a policy.
I think it's not that it would be irrelevant. I think that basically, if we would, typically, the question that comes back is, what is the financial impact of accepting the road? And we don't typically have that number. But historically, that number is, okay, so we know that we're now going to be responsible for plowing, maintenance, repaving, all of those things now because it's an accepted road. We also know that there's been precedent that all roads are accepted, if they're throughways, I assume. I'm not sure about private ways, or, I'm not sure about if the road at, what is it, the one that joins White Street to Mass Ave, that came up through that development there behind the gas station? Richards Way? Is that Richards? There's a Richards Way someplace else too.
White's Woods,
White's Woods, right. Like, I don't know if that's an accepted road,
I believe it is.
but I don't know, and the reason why I don't know, and the reason why, if I was voting for or against it, I would have voted against it, is that it's closed off on White Street, so there's no access. So it's basically more a private way,
Yeah.
or there's a gate that goes across it.
There's a ton of dead-end roads in
Yeah.
Lunenburg that
Right.
are public ways, they're public
Right.
roads. I don't know, I guess my feeling, and by the way, we do plow a lot of private ways in Lunenburg as well that are not approved roads.
Right.
That are largely extensions of dead-end roads that go beyond the, like, I live on the corner of Pleasant Street and Brown Ave, and Brown Ave extends into private way land that loops around in the other side of Pleasant Street. The town plows that, it's done so for years, largely as a matter of safety.
Right,
I honestly
right, right.
believe. And
Yeah.
I think that that's the
Yeah.
right thing to do, where it can, you know? And by the way, all the people who live on that road pay taxes just like everybody else. So,
No question,
you know,
yeah. No, I was just, it was one of those that I had written down a note afterwards about, is there a policy around this? Because every once in a while, the question does come up, okay, so what is the cost? How can you recommend yes? And it's, well, basically, we recommend yes because it's been the past practice and it's been, yes, those people are paying taxes too, and, so it's all of those things. But it is a question about whether or not there should be a recommendation, just because there is a financial impact, and we're going to say yes anyway.
Well, and this one's beyond just plowing, right? Isn't there?
There's catch
Yeah, the-
basins.
the
that need-
drainage
Catch basins,
system.
storm scepters, yeah,
Yeah.
which it's estimated to be around 2,200
a year?
a year.
Wow.
for cleaning.
Yeah,
That's substantial.
Right, that's why,
and that has to be a contracted service.
right, because we
That's how
don't
we-
have the equipment to do it because of the nature of the
That's the
catch
issue.
basin. So, which was one of the other reasons why I was like, is there a policy around this? And I suppose that basically if we're just saying, okay, if they followed all of the steps that we told them that they had to follow, and they got the clearances from all the committees, that they're required to get but I also don't know, we're making a recommendation to the town based on the cost of of something that we don't have the number for, one, and two, it's not related to the direct impact on the budget, certainly not this year's, but certainly over time. So to me, I'm not sure that we would be making a recommendation, or that I feel comfortable making a recommendation.
And that's why we didn't. I believe we deferred on that one.
Well, we deferred, but I'm not sure that we're going to have any
deferred to the-
more information at town meeting.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that there will be more information specific to the costs associated with this from either DPW or planning?
I don't anticipate any
Oh,
further
I'm sorry.
information.
I thought I heard that Jack was going to present something.
Yeah.
He'll present, but
The cost of the cleaning for the catch basins and the storm scepters, that was the estimated cost.
Right, but what he can't predict is going to be the, like the cost of plowing, who knows, it
Yeah.
depends, and then the cost of repaving, I don't know, and when that road's going to fail. So, like, it's all of that.
Yeah, I guess personally, my feeling is cost of plowing, number one, the safety aspect of it, I guess I just don't have a problem with it. I'm not sure how relevant it is to whether we accept the road or not. The disproportionate costs associated with the catch basins and the overall maintenance of the road, I'm curious as to what our past practice has been relative to other roads that may bring with them disproportionate costs.
Two issues. Number one, with respect to the cost, you got to remember it's an incremental cost. The guy with the plow is there.
Right.
It's just like.
Yeah, it's a matter of does he turn right or not.
Does he plow 300 or 400 feet or whatever it
It's an
is?
extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, so it can't be all that much, particularly relative to and I'm just guessing now, it can't be all that much relative to the taxes, local taxes paid by the residents in Butterfly Lane. So that's sort of not an issue as far as, to me at least, as far as the catch basins go, because when you replace or upgrade a catch basin, that's a real cost in that particular year, but the catch basin is what, good for how many years? And so really the actual cost from a standpoint of total life of the project is a lot less. And I don't know what that is. I mean, I'm talking.
Well, no, it's also,
It's
I mean,
rhetoric.
my question actually doesn't go to whether or not I feel it's a good idea to accept the road. My question goes to whether or not it makes sense for us to make a recommendation.
Yeah, well,
That's really more it.
yeah, sure.
Because there is financial impact, but we're not going to say no, or we might say no, but
But I mean, we're here to assess how things affect the budget, and this would clearly affect the budget, but this is why I asked if our vote then becomes irrelevant, because if we're presented with something that has finances attached to it, and we don't make a recommendation because there's precedent set someplace else, then in a sense, that's making the finance committee irrelevant on that
Okay,
warrant article.
okay.
And that's again, that's another facet to the discussion that I hope we have soon about policies and about some sort of even if it's just sort of rough guidelines. I don't know that we do ourselves or the town any favors by making these 10 commandment type policies, but rather just rough guidelines that just guide our discussion.
Sure.
And,
Yeah, and I suppose that the cost benefit would be that, yeah, on the other hand, you would, okay, here's what it's going to cost to maintain the road, and the road needs to be maintained, because if it's not maintained, then it prevents a public safety issue. And again, I'm not speaking specifically to Butterfly Lane at this point, I'm just talking about any time that the town is asked to accept a road. But anyway, that was neither here nor there, except to say, does anybody feel like we're still deferring that one for a town meeting? Because, yeah, okay.
I don't think there's any downside.
To defer it.
Except maybe
Yeah.
to defer it, you know,
Okay.
makes town meeting 5 minutes longer.
Well, plus I think it's important that if we're gonna make a recommendation on something, we need to have some type of number in front of us. I like, you know, and that I'm probably contradicting myself, because the home rule articles, I don't think there's anything in there with dollars.
You know the cost of a license.
Right, but you see, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, really, we should be having figures associated to what we're voting on. And so that's why I felt so strongly about Butterfly Lane, is I wanted to hear those figures.
Yeah.
And now I know what they are, so I have an opinion on it. But without having those figures, I didn't have anything to grab onto, so I just wasn't comfortable making a recommendation either way.
Okay. All right, well, then I guess that basically, there's no, I believe that those were the only ones that we had deferred, and we're going to continue to defer. And there was no change on any other articles, so we're pretty much ready to go for town meeting. Unless anybody had anything else that they wanted to. All right, and then, okay, so it was an active vote to make no recommendation on Article 13 about primary school. So that's why we have no recommendation with a 5-0-1 abstention. Okay, so that's, all right. It was an active. All right. Then if there's no other discussion or questions or anything on the warrant articles for the special town meeting, we can move on to department or committee reports, if anybody has any.
Just a general observation, I thought that the discussions throughout the warrant process were really excellent. You know, they were just, I left the meeting knowing a lot more about the articles than I would have just by, secluding myself in my study and wondering about stuff.
No, that's good. No, I thought that the discussions went well, too. I'm going to, like, basically my goal this year is to try to sit back and not talk so much. So is that your way of saying you don't have a department or committee report?
I'm going to follow that one, yes. I don't have anything worth talking about yet. Let it mature a little bit more. I'll bore you in a couple meetings.
Okay.
Nothing from Michelle, Jay? Peter?
Yeah, the school committee met on the 16th. I attended most of the meeting, and that which I did not attend, I watched on YouTube. They met for about 2.5 hours that night. Lots of topics covered. The highlights are the MCAS scores came in recently, and the superintendent and her administration team reported on them. It was a fairly exhaustive report, which I will not be able to do any justice. Suffice to say, however, the middle and high schools are doing comparatively well, both compared to previous
Oh,
tests.
so 6,
Yeah.
Lunenburg compared to Lunenburg prior.
Lunenburg compared to Lunenburg, adequate progress in some areas and substantial progress in other areas. As well as there are comparisons to like communities with like demographics, which we also scored quite well in the high 60s percentile. The elementary school the performance was not as well, as good. And there is some concern, particularly in the area of like communities. So whereas we were in the high 60s in the middle and high schools, we were in the mid to high 30s in the elementary school, which is naturally an area of some concern, particularly with respect to the demographic issues that we've wrestled with over the course of the last year or two.
Well, just a point of clarification, when you say the elementary school, are you talking Turkey Hill? Are you
Turkey Hill,
talking,
yeah,
okay, so
there's
not
no MCAS
primary?
testing in the primary school.
Okay.
So MCAS testing begins in the 3rd grade, I believe.
Okay,
And there's testing in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, so.
Okay,
at
thank
all
you.
levels.
And just for clarification, and then the comparison of up to other communities or with comparable socioeconomics or demographics? Okay, good.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. And I would encourage anybody who's interested to watch the first part of the meeting that's on YouTube, because it's, as I said, I can't possibly offer the level of detail or insight that the superintendent and her administration team offered, so I would strongly encourage that. There was also a financial update from Mr. Cassidy. He submitted, which I believe is required by the statute, the year-end report for last fiscal year. I don't think there are any surprises on that relative to the spending, and a lot of that has already been worked out through the free cash process and that sort of thing, but there is a requirement to submit that report. He also submitted requests for line item transfers, however, which amounted to $297,540 in the current year budget. And what this largely accounted for was reconciliation of salary and wages across the entire school department. So in some schools where they had retirements of senior teachers or departures of senior teachers, they hired less senior people. In other schools, they had some junior people who resigned, who they replaced with senior people. And in some cases, we have employees that, such as speech therapists and school psychologists, they cover multiple schools, and their proportion of time in a particular school has changed due to needs from one school to another. And that required, for accounting purposes, some line item transfers totaling, in total, almost $300,000.
Go ahead then.
That was
Oh,
basically
that's it?
that was
Okay.
basically it.
I have a question then regarding the $300,000. These transfers are within the schools.
Within the school
So
department.
that means that $300,000 is no longer available for whatever it was going to be spent on. This $300,000 is going to go to salaries, correct?
Think of it this way. So for example, in some cases, I'm speaking because I don't have the specific numbers, and actually I do have them in front of me, but it would take me forever to quote them.
Okay.
Let's say that you had a speech therapist that was entirely allocated for the middle school in the budget.
Yep.
But as it turns out, that speech therapist is being used equally in the middle school, Turkey Hill, and the primary school. Well, then 2/3 of that speech therapist's salary needs to be moved as part of a line item transfer.
Okay.
So the dollars are effectively the same.
The dollars-
It's just being spent in a different place.
Okay, so the $300,000 that is payroll related is not necessarily coming from some other area that is non-payroll related. It's just shifting
change.
around within payroll?
That's my understanding, is
Okay.
the overwhelming majority of that. There may be some other, Moxnick supplies-related things, but the overwhelming majority of this is transferring of salary lines to reflect where people were hired this year.
I feel better about that now with that. Where I was coming from, the questions were directed more at what should we expect next year if in fact we're paying that much more in salary and we're giving short shrift to materials or to other.
No, I don't think that's.
You don't think that's gonna play out that way at all?
Well, not from
okay,
this
not
activity.
from
I don't
this
think,
activity.
I don't think this activity is at all indicative of that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, this is more moving money from
All right.
Turkey Hill to the high school.
Well, and it's also,
Budget, yeah.
it's also, and I, certainly applaud Mr. Cassidy, it's reflecting what's real
Mm-hmm.
in terms of where hours are being spent and how much money is actually being spent in each building relative to, oh, well, we need to hire a psychologist or a speech therapist and we're just gonna throw them in the middle school budget because it's the middle school budget. They're actually trying to account for where time is being spent and therefore where money is being spent.
So it's getting a little more, the planning is actually getting a little more granular.
Correct. Well, or the accounting anyway.
The county, okay, let's hope the planning, they either follows it or precedes it. Okay, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on any of the committee? Okay, so we just had the one. I will also say, even though there was no committee report on it, that the Council on Aging
Association- Oh, the Council on Aging?
had, that's okay, they had their ham and bean supper last weekend, the day of the homecoming. They thought that maybe they didn't have such great attendance because, like, Lunenburg did not win? Is that-
Nor did the senior float win, which was a big controversy in my house.
I'm just,
The freshmen won the float
Yes, they
competition.
did.
So, yeah.
so,
Energy.
But
So
it
it-
was
but
it was a
was-
spectacular day in Lunenburg
yeah,
nonetheless.
very good.
And there was, the pancake breakfast was that morning too for the Boy Scouts.
Oh, okay,
It
yep.
was a big day.
Yeah, it was, and certainly the ham and bean supper went off well. But yeah, if you want to talk about Saturday at all, then, is it just you that's going?
No, I think Dave is going as well.
Okay,
Yep, it's the annual meeting of the Association of Town Finance Committees, and it's a one-day workshop, so there'll be different seminars that is really good foundational material to understand the budget and the function of finance committees. The ATFC writes a finance committee member manual every year that is on the website. So it's just a good opportunity to brush up on your skills and meet some other like-minded people.
yeah, no, it was a good time. It was, when I went the
Yeah,
first year I was on, I did get a lot out of it.
I got a lot out of it. Less out of it the first one, because I'd only been on the finance committee about 3 weeks. More out of it the second one, I actually knew what I was listening to
Yeah,
a little more. Where is it?
It's at Bridgewater, University of Bridgewater. Yep.
Yeah, I would love to attend. The Lunenburg Bengals 6th and 8th grade teams are on a playoff run this year, so I am fully committed
videographer.
through their
yeah.
runs.
Okay, then with that, do we have a town manager or finance director report?
Free cash is certified.
Oh, good.
Can I have it?
It's all mine. Free cash was certified last Friday. $1,107,694. Retained earnings for the enterprise funds were also certified. The Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings is $53,028. Sewer Enterprise retained earnings, $1,972,558. And Solid Waste Enterprise, $9,476.
Thank you. Questions for Karen? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to minutes. We have a couple of minutes.
Yes, so I have hard copies if anybody's interested in either of the meetings that I circulated. So I've circulated minutes for September 26th, which was the 26th was the public hearing, I believe, correct?
No.
Oh, no.
Public hearing would be November
September
10th.
26th was the one that,
I'm sorry, not November 10th, October 10th.
10th.
Sorry.
Scared me. September 26th was the workshop meeting that we had prior to the training.
Yes.
Where we reviewed the draft warrant.
Right, yeah.
And then the 10th was the 3rd was the public hearing. Yes. Correct?
I don't think so.
Hang on.
No, I listed it as the 3rd and it was the 10th. So.
October 10th.
Okay, correct. So I do not have the 10th yet. I have the 26th and the 3rd.
Right,
Yes.
right.
So
So
the
the
3rd
26th was the regular meeting, and the
meeting.
3rd was the one before the training.
Yes, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
And I do not have the 10th yet. So I have the 26th and the 3rd.
Okay. Did people have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
People happy with the minutes?
Yep.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Because have we ever
Yes, you
rented the car?
can.
I can?
Remember,
Okay.
you're the
Yes,
one that
all right.
told us.
Okay, yes, that's right. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Okay, sure, I can vote. First of all, I thought both the minutes were well-structured and certainly covered the video well. Easy, it was like having a libretto.
So is that almost like a motion?
I move to accept both of them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we accept the minutes of the 26th and October the 3rd. Next meeting is not a meeting. I didn't post it as a meeting. I'm not sure if I should post a meeting. Should I post a meeting for Tuesday?
If you think there's going to be more than the quorum, yeah.
All
Are
right.
we going to do anything?
We don't need to meet beforehand at all, and we're not going to deliberate, we're not going to discuss anything in the context of
So
the group.
I think it's been discussed at both the selectmen and the school committee that the expectation is that all the committees will post for that meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I was busy posting for the symposium, so I didn't post it as a meeting.
You did a very good job, by the way. I've seen the advertising on
Okay.
Facebook, and I think you did a very good job stating,
Yep.
stating our case. So,
Yeah, thank you.
I think that we should post.
I don't know if I still can. If I send one,
I'm sorry, I was thinking town meeting.
no, I'm talking about the symposium on Tuesday night. But nobody's here tomorrow.
Kathy sometimes send it tonight.
Okay, so I'll send it tonight, and hopefully it will get up. If it doesn't, is there someplace that I can just stick it?
Yeah, okay, I'll be up at town center because that's where I pick up my mail. I can
You can just
stick a
put a piece of tape on it.
And hopefully you don't get arrested for defacing something.
Yeah, all right, then I'll go ahead and do that, and try to get that to her, and to you, so that you have a copy. Well, you'll get it anyway.
Yeah, go up there tomorrow, feel useful.
Thank you, appreciate it, you're useful anyway. And then after that is, we will meet on the 7th. I will also reach out and see if anybody's available to come in and talk about the department, see if any department heads are free that night. And since we're going to be getting together anyway, maybe. I guess we'll just plan on, we're going to meet on the 7th, and I will invite departments, and then if we happen to have anything to hear on the agreement with the police department, then we'll hear that at that point.
Bargaining.
The collective bargaining, thank you.
Can we put the definition goal on either the 7 or 14 agenda?
Yes.
And if I can just say something about that, I think we need the town manager's participation in that,
Oh, yeah.
because it's really her language.
Yeah.
Actually, the other thing is that, do you know whether or not there's any movement on whatever that committee is? About the service level committee?
No, I haven't heard of it.
And you haven't heard anything more on that? Okay. That's the Board of Selectmen, right? But I can write to them too when I'm writing to the planning board saying, I keep hearing about committees and we have people picked out, but, okay. Then with that, if there's nothing else from anybody on the committee, anybody in the public has no comment, okay, then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, we are adjourned at
That's
7:55.
7:55. I was trying to go by that clock too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I guess we can go home and watch football or something.